Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm jumping on a bandwagon. For some reason, a lot of people in the Assassin's Creed community at the moment have been putting up videos of them ranking their favourite to least favourite Assassin's Creed games, and well, it sounded like fun. And I mean, I have a lot of opinions when it comes to Assassin's Creed, so why not jump on the trend and try and get those views, fam? So yeah, for the interest of clarity, I'm only ranking the 12 mainline games, so none of the sort of side games, so no Liberation, Chronicles, Bloodlines, Altair Chronicles, Discovery, anything like that. Just purely full mainline games. For a number of reasons, partly because, as Fishy said in his video, it's not entirely fair to rank a game which is a lot smaller in scope against a AAA title. Secondly, I haven't actually played any of them, I've just watched playthroughs. So the fact that I don't have any actual experience of playing the game for myself, I think would be a bit unjust to try and I can't really talk about how fun the gameplay is and things like that. I can talk about the story, but I can't talk about how the game feels, and then that's not a fair comparison to the games I've actually played from start to finish. So we're not including any of them. Before I get into it, yes, I am wearing an Oran High School Host Club t-shirt. I wore this when I went to meet Vic Mignogna at a Comic-Con, and I mean, he was super happy, but like now I don't know how to feel about any of that. But that's a story for another time. Let's not talk about that. Let's just get straight into ranking Assassin's Creed, shall we? So let's start from the bottom and work our way to the top. Coming in dead last is of course Assassin's Creed Odyssey. This game is the bane of my existence. I'm a very chill person normally, like it takes a lot to truly rile me up, but the mere mention of this game boils my blood. It's not an Assassin's Creed game, it's an action RPG set in ancient Greece, and to be brutally honest, it doesn't even do that well either. The story is meh at best, the enemies are damage sponges, you need to do hours upon hours of boring side content just to get to the next story quest, and the main character is just a husk for player choice. Now, I know this isn't the only game where your character is entirely created by you. You know, The Elder Scrolls has been doing it for years, Dark Souls, Cyberpunk, it's a character that you create to be the embodiment of you in a game. But this is Assassin's Creed. Up until Odyssey, we'd always been given a character with a full backstory, a personality, motivations, and a character arc. With Cassandra, she has none of that. She has a backstory, but how she actually deals with it and responds to it is entirely up to the player. All her decisions and personality traits are determined by the player. That's why I find it so frustrating when people say that Cassandra is their favourite favourite protagonist, if you will. Because the Cassandra that you played and the Cassandra that I played are likely to be two completely different people. So how can you properly judge? I mean, yes, we could always make slightly different decisions with our characters, you know, if you wanted, you could go through all of Brotherhood without ever bothering to track down the war machines, but that doesn't really make any great difference to Ezio's character, and ultimately you know that Ezio did go and track down the war machines, whether you did it or not. What you chose to do in the previous games didn't actually affect the story because the story was already there, it was just you were playing it. Whereas with Odyssey, what you do in the story actually impacts the greater narrative because there can only be one set of canon events, but they don't tell us what that is because it's the whole point is you're supposed to be creating your Odyssey in a world that was never supposed to be about player choice, in a world that was supposed to be giving us stories to experience to build into a greater narrative that runs through the entire series. And it was doing that pretty much until Odyssey came along and decided to throw all of that out of the window for an entirely player created RPG experience, which if you enjoyed it, good for you, but that's not what Assassin's Creed was about. It's still not, it shouldn't be what it's about. but unfortunately Ubisoft were determined to turn the series into The Witcher. And to be honest, that's not even what The Witcher is about, because, I mean, it's not. Like, Geralt is at least a real character. Cassandra is not a character. Cassandra is just a husk. Right. Let me get back to my script before I go off on a mega rant tangent. This was why I scripted this video, and I'm still doing it. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, I was going to say, Odyssey shits on everything Assassin's Creed is supposed to be. After a game which showed the origin of the Brotherhood, Assassin's Creed Origins, I kind of expected something which would continue that story. Let us see what happens next after Bayek created the Hidden Ones. Instead, we are rocketed even further into the past, into a time period where the assassins did not exist in any form. Well, apparently. And even after just discovering who the Order of the Ancients were in the previous game, in this game we don't even have them. We've just got the Cult of Cosmos. Like, where the hell is my Assassin Templar story? What is this? What is this? Because it's not Assassin's Creed. I can't find Assassin's Creed in this game. I can find hints, I can find Easter eggs, I can find some Isu bullshit, but I cannot find my Assassin's Creed game. All I can find is ancient Greece RPG nonsense. The choice of a male or female protagonist annoyed me from the get-go when they first announced that you could pick either Cassandra or Alexios, but it annoyed me even more when we discovered that only one was canon. And while it was one thing when Ubisoft just said that in passing, it's another entirely when it was actually confirmed in Valhalla. In Valhalla, it specifically says in Layla's laptop that Layla was given the staff of Hermes, or Hermestus, or whatever the hell it is, by Cassandra, meaning that Cassandra is 100% definitively the eagle-bearing Mystios and Alexios is Deimos. So why the hell were we picking in the first place? Now, when I played Odyssey, I played as Cassandra, but I cannot imagine how annoyed I would have been if I'd chosen Alexios, only to discover that the entire version of the game I played was completely fabricated, that there never was a Mystios called Alexios, that he was always Deimos, and that I essentially played the game wrong because they never told me not to play it that way. That, to me, is dumb as all hell. And it all, of course, is because Ubisoft believe that you can't sell a game with a female protagonist. And I mean, when Valhalla came out, it pretty much confirmed that that is absolutely their philosophy, and that is why we keep being given these completely ridiculous gender choices that don't make sense within the series and ultimately are just bad for storytelling. More than that though, there's also the modern day, which is just nothing. It is, in my opinion, the worst modern day we've ever had, and I'm including Unity in that. Like, this is bad. Layla's back again, having the personality of a Brillo pads. Victoria Bibo, a character no one cared about from the comics, has now made her way from transmedia into actual game. Kiyoshi Takahura, a character who we did actually like from the comics and from Initiates, showed up, but only in voice, because why bother putting the effort into creating a character model, I guess? And then we have Alana, a new character who... I don't even know who Alana was supposed to be. She quoted, "I make my own luck," for some reason, and she's good with computers, and that's really all we know. The best thing that happened in all of Odyssey was in the DLC when Layla yeeted Victoria across the room to her death. It's not supposed to be funny, but if you've ever seen it, it is hilarious. Nice one, Ubisoft. Nice one. At the end of the day though, Odyssey just isn't fun. I don't enjoy it. I tried and I just didn't have fun. Eventually, I realised that I have finite time on this rock floating through space, and I deserve to spend it doing something better than playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Oh boy. I like to call this game Assassin's Creed Trees because some of my strongest memories of playing it are just climbing through trees in what Ubisoft clearly thought was interesting parkour gameplay, but is actually just as exciting as walking in a straight line on the ground. AC3 is boring, that's the gist of it. Connor is woefully unlikable and has no real personality, and I'm not saying that every character needs to be a charming babe magnet like Ezio, but Connor just has nothing going for him. His dialogue is bland and he doesn't really develop into anything more than angry vengeance boy. The time period is one of the worst in my opinion. No offense to the Americans watching this, but American history is not that interesting overall. Unless it's in a musical written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. AC3 would have benefited from some singing founding fathers, that's what I'm saying. But seriously, America was just not very developed at the time, meaning that a lot of the map is just empty woodlands and snowy fields, and there's no interesting architecture like in the previous games. There are no iconic landmarks to explore or engaging settings, it's just sparse colonial townships. And the gameplay? Ugh, all the gun battles and eavesdropping quests and joining in the war and going on Paul Revere's ride. It's just not for me. The one saving grace of Assassin's Creed 3 is the modern day, and I feel bad ranking the game so low when it gave us actual modern day gameplay in a variety of locations, plus some great character moments between Sean, Rebecca, Desmond and William. However, the actual location of the modern day temple is pretty bland, and that ending, as we all know, is horrendous and is the moment that killed Assassin's Creed as we know it. So unfortunately, the modern day can't save Assassin's Creed 3 from getting second last on this list. But you have to understand, I love some of those modern day conversations. I love Rebecca talking about Daniel Cross and Hannah. I love all of Sean's waxing lyrical about how much he hates America. I love that moment when Desmond and William get in a fist fight. I love Warren Vidic showing up and getting blasted with a piece of Eden. There are so many great moments in that modern day section. But modern day is a small part of that game, and I don't think I can ever put myself through Assassin's Creed 3 again, no matter how good the modern day was, and that should probably tell you something about its quality. I had high hopes for Unity. It had been 3 years since we'd last had an Assassin's Creed with a big, bustling city full of famous buildings and streets filled with NPCs and a classic assassin story. So I was excited. However, I didn't have a PS4 at the time, so I decided to live vicariously through gamers online who had access to the game. And then it released. I don't need to tell you what a buggy mess Unity was on launch, you've all seen the footage. Characters had no skin, Arno was flying through the air, it was a disaster. However, it wasn't the bugs that made Unity the first game in the series to truly cause me to lose all hope for the future. It was the modern day. When I saw the modern day was reduced to a few cutscenes with nothing but Bishop's face and Sean's disembodied voice, seriously, where the hell was Rebecca? Like, they've never answered that question for me. Someone tell me. I have a headcanon that it's because she kept singing Do You Hear the People Sing, so Sean locked her in a cupboard and she couldn't come out for the whole game. And I mean, I'll accept that until I hear something better. I was so disappointed. I had tolerated the Abstergo entertainment aspect in the hopes that it would build to something greater, and instead we got this. Stories of exciting modern day events like blowing up Abstergo Labs and Galena being there. I think she was mentioned, right? Oh, I don't even know. But definitely stories of blowing up Abstergo Labs. But not getting to see any of it. Just hearing about it from Sean, who we can't see because he's not even been rendered in the game, just Bishop. And don't get me wrong, I'm actually one of the few fans who likes Bishop as a character. And the fact that she had this mysterious past that apparently only like 3 people knew about, I genuinely wanted to find out more about her. And then they dropped her like a hot potato. Like they do with everything that they've come up with in this series. But yeah, I was so upset. Was that really all the story was worth to Ubisoft in 2014? In 2016, having got a PS4 and having some passion restored by Syndicate, I finally bought Unity. Yes, the modern day upset me, but the rest of the game would be fun, right? Like, after all, it was exactly what I'd been hoping for. The big city assassin story, like Brotherhood or Revelations, and I just got one in Syndicate and I'd enjoyed that, so surely Unity would be fun too. And at first I was really enjoying it. Paris was gorgeous, the visuals looked amazing, the parkour was fluid and flowing and swift and fun, and the idea of an assassin being raised by a Templar family was interesting to me. However, the further into the game I got, the less fun I had. The love story became cloying, mostly because Elise wasn't that likeable and I couldn't really fathom what Arno saw in her. Arno himself became less charming and more like that one friend who thinks he's funny but is actually a twat. And the rest of the cast were forgettable. To be honest, I can't remember anyone else in that game apart from Bellic and Germain. Like, were there other characters? I couldn't tell you. The combat is horrific, and I know that people have told me that I'm wrong about this, but genuinely, I've never been so frustrated with combat in a game as I was with Unity. I don't know what it was about it, but it was infuriating, and my friend played it and he said the same thing, so there must be something to it. It can't just be me being crap at the game. Like, it was rage quit material, and I've never felt like that with an Assassin's Creed in terms of combat before. I don't know what was going on there. If I ever see one of those acrobat dudes with the rapiers who just like flips about, I am going to leap of faith off my roof onto my concrete patio. And who decided to put a timer on eagle vision? Who did that? The leveling system being related to your outfit was dire, and it meant that you had to be constantly grinding for money to afford better clothes and gear just to have a chance of staying alive. And that last memory where you have to storm the castle or whatever, oh god, I just hated it. I hated it. I hated everything about it. Unity also has a co-op mode, which, to be honest, I've never really had a chance to play because every time I tried, my internet just was having none of it. So I can't really comment on whether it was good or not, but I like it in concept and I think it's a cool feature, but, you know, I can't really put views on paper about that. The one thing I really did enjoy in Unity were the Helix Rifts. Are they a bit silly? Yeah, definitely. But they are fun, and god, Unity needed some fun. Like, it wasn't... Fun was not a thing that I had with Unity. The other thing I really enjoyed about Unity was getting to track down locations from the Three Musketeers, because that's my favourite book and I have like 5 copies of it. But I'm not giving credit to Ubisoft for that. That was my fun. Unity is a damn shame because it has a fantastic world and tons of potential and it looks great and it had a story that would have been good if it had just been a little bit better, and it all just went to waste. It should have been amazing and it just wasn't, and that will always be disappointing to me. Okay, so I'll talk a bit more about this when I get to Black Flag, but you have to understand that I hate naval combat. It's the least enjoyable gameplay mechanic that they've ever added to this series, in my opinion. I would take hours of those tower defense missions from Revelations over sailing ships. So Rogue was a game I avoided like the plague for a long time, but then my friend bought me it to make me play it, so, you know, I did. And it's fine. I think it's unfairly treated by a lot of fans, but I also don't think it's anything to write home about. I don't love it, I don't hate it, it's just there. Shay's alright, although I tired of listening to him talking about making his own luck very quickly. The idea of a story from a Templar point of view was cool in theory, but in practice it didn't really do anything different from any other normal AC title. In a normal Assassin's Creed, assassins are good and Templars are bad. In Rogue, Templars are good, assassins are bad. It doesn't lean heavily into the Templar ideology or really examine why they see the world that they do, not nearly as well as the modern day has in the past. Instead, it seemed like the writers wanted us so badly to agree with Shay that they just made the assassins straight up bad guys. There's no nuance there. The Assassin-Templar conflict has always been shades of grey, complex emotions and theories, and everyone doing good and everyone doing bad, and it ultimately coming down to how you personally perceive the world, being whether you side with one camp or the other. But we didn't really get any of that in Rogue, which was really disappointing considering the game was marketed on a story where you're playing as a Templar and get to see things from the other point of view. In fact, I felt like the modern day in Rogue was actually a lot better at telling that story, because we got to meet characters like Violet DaCosta, we got to see Otso Berg in the flesh for the first time and hear how they perceive things. And for all her faults, I actually really liked Violet DaCosta. I thought she was interesting and spunky, and I mean, yeah, okay, she shot Rebecca and I'll never forgive her for that, but I would have liked to see her come back in the games again if she hadn't, you know, got blown up in a comic. But yeah, the game didn't really tell us anything we didn't already know about Assassins and Templars, and I feel like that was a big waste of time. Like, there was potential there that was definitely underutilized. But the game does have Hatham, and Hatham's always cool, so that's a plus. And some of the memory sequences are pretty fun, but like I say, it's not a standout title, but it's not a bad one either. It's just there. Okay. No, wait, listen, just hear me out, okay? Calm down. Please just listen. Before you turn me off, let me remind you that this is based on my personal feelings toward the games, and it's which are my favourites and which aren't. Obviously, I know Black Flag is a masterpiece. Unfortunately, it's not a masterpiece that I enjoyed very much. The reality is that I loathe everything about sailing and naval combat. Every second I spend on the Jackdaw, or the Morrigan, or the Aquila, or that one from Origins, I just want to be dead. And considering the vast majority of Black Flag is sailing about on the Jackdaw, I spent a lot of time in that game wanting to be dead. It's not that the sailing is bad, it's not made bad, it's not, poorly constructed. It works fine, I just get no enjoyment out of it. And that's a personal thing. I get no enjoyment out of FIFA or Dark Souls or Euro Truck Simulator, but other people do. Gaming's a personal thing. In terms of story, I love Black Flag. Edward is a wonderful character, and if you know me, you know that Welsh accents are my absolute favourite. I mean, God, my favourite actor and my biggest TV crush is Ewan Griffith. Watching Edward develop from a washed-up pirate to a fully fledged assassin and learn all about the observatory and build connections with his friends and learn that friendship is more important than gold, is just wonderful. Like, I can't describe how beautiful that is. And it has some of the best supporting characters in the whole series. Blackbeard, Mary Read, Anne Bonny, Stede Bonnet. And don't get me wrong, I love pirates, right? Like, Pirates of the Caribbean is one of my favourite series. And I do like tall ships. I just mentioned Ewan Griffith. I love Hornblower. It's one of my favourite shows. I just don't like having to sail those ships myself. Black Flag also has a gorgeous world, those glorious Caribbean beaches and the dense jungles, and it's always so sunny, it's beautiful. It's like something out of a holiday catalogue. And I'm much happier when I'm on land doing missions rather than at sea. That said, there are way too many tailing missions in Black Flag, dear God. This was also the game that had the impossible task of picking up where 3 left off in the modern day by killing Desmond. And to be honest, I think they did the best that they could. Exploring Abstergo entertainment and hacking into the computers was a lot of fun, and it took us back to being locked in Abstergo and finding out about the Templars and how they view things back in Assassin's Creed 1. And honestly, I love Melanie LeMay. She's so cute. What a star. It also gave us Sean the barista and Rebecca the courier and provided some of my favourite moments between the two of them. I love all of those scenes so much. Plus those Desmond audio files. Oh man, I cry every time when he says, "Tell them how I lost my way, and then I found it again, just in time to save the world." And then just end it there. No, we're not going to talk about this. And I mean, that's not the only moment. Like, the dialogue in this game from Darby McDevitt is just unreal. Like, I don't think any of us will ever forget, in a world without gold, we could have been heroes. Like, bloody hell. And then at the very end, when Edward looks over and sees all his friends, and you hear the parting glass. I can't hear the parting glass without crying, you know? And I already liked that song before Black Flag came out, and then it just was like, oh my god. For all the money that e'er I had, I spent it in good company. Anyway, but yeah, overall I really appreciate this game and the whole story and characters and world that Darby McDevitt created. If I was ranking the games purely on story, it would be right up there in the top 5. But I can't ignore how unenjoyable I found the gameplay. which is why it ends up so low down in this list. But believe me, it breaks my heart as much as it's breaking yours. Origins will always be a game that I struggle to form a conclusion on. Even at the time, I couldn't decide what I felt. I wanted to write a review about it and put it online, but I honestly couldn't find the words to even talk about it. When I saw the footage from E3 at first, I felt disappointed. I could see the RPG mechanics forming, and I knew that we were headed down a path that was taking us far away from the AC that I knew and loved. But at the same time, it was ancient Egypt, one of my favourite historical eras. If you look at my bookshelf back here, you will find so many books on Egypt. I did an art project in Egypt in secondary school. My favourite movie is The Prince of Egypt. You seen a theme? So obviously I wasn't about to turn down a game that gave me the chance to explore my favourite period in history and sing Prince of Egypt songs at every turn. And Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat and Joseph King of Dreams. I really like religious Egypt stories. Don't know why. Don't know why. I'm not even religious. And in that regard, it was great. Egypt had some gorgeous locations, although locking the Valley of the Kings in a DLC, it was definitely a letdown for me, because I don't buy DLCs on the whole. Like, sell me a whole game, bitches, please. I loved exploring the pyramids, visiting the Library of Alexandria, watching the shooting stars in the desert, and of course, it gave us Bayek, one of the best protagonists this series has ever had. And the incredible performance of Abu Bakr Salam in that role, like, it was incredible. He is incredible. However, that's sort of where the positives stop for me. The story is a bit all over the shop. It starts out really well with the reveal that Bayek accidentally killed his own son, Kemu. It was also refreshing to see an older assassin again, rather than a youthful wild child like Arno, Evie and Jacob had been in the previous two games. But quickly the plot starts to fall apart with no clear narrative other than take down the targets. And unlike some of the other games in the series, the targets are not fleshed out at all. They're just random people with animal code names and supervillain-like evil schemes. And then there's Aya, who, in my opinion, isn't that interesting. Also, fucking up Aminet's story from Assassin's Creed 2 is kind of disappointing. Origins was supposed to reveal the origin of the Brotherhood, and it kind of did. It showed Bayek creating the organisation that would one day become the Brotherhood. It showed how the symbol was inspired by an eagle skull. And at the time, that made me really emotional because I was excited to see what happened next. Excited to see where this Brotherhood went in the years between what I knew and you know, its origin. Except that, other than the Origin DLCs, we never have. Odyssey took us even further into the past, and Valhalla put us 800 years in the future, taking us so much further than Bayek's creation, meaning that there's still centuries in between that we have no idea how the Brotherhood evolved from what Bayek created to what Basim and Hytham have been part of in Valhalla. To be honest, that would have been much more interesting. I wanted to see how the Hidden Ones developed, and so far that's never happened. And to be honest, that would have been the more interesting game, especially as in Origins, the creation doesn't actually have much build-up. Right at the very end, Bayek just sort of decides to create a group of fighters. It's not actually that well executed as an origin story at all. And the Odyssey DLC, Legacy of the First Blade, just serves to derail it even further by proving that a lot of what we thought Bayek created was actually already in existence. And that's not Origin's problem, that's Odyssey's problem, and another reason why that game is so painful. The modern day was also incredibly disappointing, considering Syndicate and the Transmedia had set up so many interesting plot lines prior to Origins, only for Origins to come along and acknowledge absolutely none of them. So Desmond's son, the project, the Phoenix Project, Juno, all of those things that we knew and loved stopped existing when Origins came along. Instead, we got the new character of Layla Hassan talking to herself in a cave. However, the gameplay is fun for what it is, and I did have a really good time playing the game. Bayek's wonderful character kept me engrossed even when the story wasn't really there for me, and there are some great memorable moments in there, some that I still have to this day despite only playing the game once. That said, Origins is what set us down the road of being able to climb everything, having no fall damage, RPG enemy leveling and damage sponges, wide open areas with nothing in them, and way too much grinding. Thankfully, none of these were that bad in Origins, but the positive reception to them is what drove them to implement them so heavily in Odyssey. What a terrible legacy for that game to have. I made a whole video on my thoughts on Valhalla, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I genuinely enjoyed Valhalla. Eivor is a very likeable character, her story with Sigurd and Basim is interesting and engaging, the world events are fun rather than being pointless filler for grinding purposes, and the story arcs are mostly a good time. It's a good game. That said, it was already straddling the line between being an Assassin's Creed game and an epic Viking simulator, and unfortunately, Ubisoft has proved with their post-release content that it 100% thinks that Valhalla is an epic Viking simulator. And now we realise that Darby McDevitt is the only one that was clinging to some semblance of an Assassin's Creed narrative. Yes, I've seen the werewolf's image, and yes, I hate it. I'm not going to push Valhalla further down my list due to its post-release content, because I really did have a great time with the main game, and I still pick it up and do world events when I want to listen to a podcast or something, so that I have something to do with my brain and my eyes while I'm listening. I don't know why I'm like that, we just are. Do I wish Valhalla was more of an AC game than it is? Yes, absolutely. Am I now incredibly afraid of what the next game will look like, considering that the only man who ever gave a shit has now left Ubisoft? Oh god, yes. But I like Valhalla, and it's taking number 6 on the... Besides, it gave me Sean and Rebecca getting married, Desmond the Reader, some extra Sean, Rebecca and Desmond chats in the audio logs. So yeah, that alone bumps it up the list. The game that started it all. Back in the day, I really didn't enjoy this game. I found it tedious and repetitive, and I just wasn't really into it. However, I replayed it recently, as in within the past few months, and I had this newfound love for it. Assassin's Creed 1 is brilliant. I didn't appreciate how well crafted the cities are, how perfectly you can run around the rooftops and avoid detection. I didn't appreciate how wonderful the social stealth is and how many options you have for approaching a target. I didn't even find it repetitive when I replayed it. I actually enjoyed it. I played it over a few days and genuinely had fun with every mission, every conversation, every task that I had to do. And it's not nostalgia because, like I said, I didn't enjoy it the first time round. So this isn't me thinking, oh my god, this game was so fun when I first played it, because that might as well have been the first time I played it. But this is what an Assassin's Creed should be. This is the benchmark. This is everything that I want. And I don't mean pickpocketing and eavesdropping, interrogations to, do these tasks to get the target. I mean social stealth, worlds that exist for clever parkour mechanics, exploration of the creed and what it means to be an assassin, pieces of Eden that actually impact the story and are relevant, or not just thrown in for the sake of having magical lightning swords. Templars with real personalities and motives, historical characters that we actually know and recognise, and finding out how they actually impacted the events through this new perspective of an Assassin-Templar war. Combat that involves timing and precision, it isn't just mashing buttons and hoping for the best. AC1 had it all. And realising that we will probably never get another game like it is heartbreaking for me. Because that's all I want. Just give me a proper Assassin's Creed. Please. So you'll have noticed that one of the games that a lot of people have at the bottom of their list hasn't shown up yet, and you're like, wait, that can't possibly be number 4, right? Well, unpopular opinion time, because I loved Syndicate. It gets a lot of hate from the fandom, and believe me, I understand why. It definitely has its flaws, and the tone and atmosphere and its kind of jokey nature and comedy definitely doesn't land for everyone, and I appreciate that. But for someone like me who had been disappointed in the series for 4 games at this point, Syndicate was exactly what I needed to get me back into the series. I love Evie, and I even love Jacob and the different outlooks that they both have. I love how Evie's the smart, you know, dedicated assassin, and Jacob is sort of a funny guy who wants to, you know, make the rooks, and I know so many people hate that, but I liked it. I love the location of Victorian London. It's such a great place to be part of, and I love getting to see all these iconic landmarks like Buckingham Palace and St Paul's Cathedral and the Tower of London all recreated on the screen, and being able to actually explore them as an assassin. I enjoyed zipping around the city on the line launcher, even though it's definitely out of place, but it's fun and I enjoyed it. I love how tall the buildings are, like you're really like right up there in the sky, and that's what I want. I love these big huge buildings that we had in the old games, like Unity and Syndicate, and I guess Origins too. I loved feeling like I was making a difference to the city, that clearing out the Templar influence was actually making the city a better place for its residents, like what we did in Brotherhood. You can actually see it improving and people being happier, and I like that feeling that I am a hero saving children from workhouses, stopping gang wars. I felt like I was really doing something good, more than just hunting down people who have assassinated my family or whatever. Like, I'm taking down people to make the world a better place, and I really like that aspect. We don't get that all the time. Where Syndicate is a letdown for me is in its Templar story. The villains are all made up characters due to the fact that the game is set in the late 1800s, meaning that it's too close to the present day to use real life characters for fear of upsetting their descendants. It's one thing to call the Borgia evil, it's another entirely to drag Karl Marx or Queen Victoria through the mud when their descendants are alive and well today. In Queen Victoria's case, her descendants are the reigning monarchs of the Commonwealth, so you probably don't want to piss them off. I did really enjoy the modern day story, however. Whilst it wasn't great to only be able to see it in cutscenes and, you know, you're still an initiate playing on your Helix or whatever, it was really engaging and it set up so many new plot points that I was excited to see go somewhere. Fuck you, Ubisoft. It also brought Galina Voronina over from the Initiate story to the games, and I love Galina. I was so happy to see her. I screamed when she came on the screen. I was so happy. Of course, every plot that was introduced in Syndicate was relegated to the comics after the game release, which is the greatest tragedy of this entire series, because it really did seem like it was going somewhere. It introduced Desmond's son, for fuck's sake, and then just didn't do anything with it. I genuinely thought we would see Elijah in the next game, but nope, just Layla in a cave. Just Layla in a cave. We never even saw the helicopter in Origins. Like, we're still waiting on that damn helicopter. But in spite of its flaws, Syndicate is still one of the most enjoyable games in the series for me, and that's why it's so high on this list. Like, I woke up every morning so excited to play more Syndicate, and I still love going in and just exploring that world. I love the soundtrack, I love the sound design, I love the murder songs, I love solving the deadly crimes, you know, I love riding around in my train, I love Agnes McBean. Like, there's so much about this game that I just loved. I know it's not the most popular in the series, but it means a lot to me, so it's taken number 4 on the list. Special mention also has to go to the database in Syndicate, which I just laughed so much at. It's written quite heavily by Danny Wallace, who plays Sean. Danny Wallace is, in real life, one of my favourite people. I love his radio show. I've got over there a whole ton of his books. So I spotted a whole bunch of his in-jokes, like references to hover spoons and leisure centres in Loughborough, and that really made it for me. I really enjoyed that, and I had so much fun finding every single database entry in the game. I get that that's, like, not something that most Assassin's Creed fans would be looking for, but it was something that I really enjoyed on a personal level. So that might be biased and cause me to put Syndicate higher than it maybe should be, but this is my list and I can do what I want. So it should come as no surprise that the Ezio trilogy are at the top. I saw someone commented on Fishy's Assassin's Creed ranking video saying it's annoying that the Ezio games are always the top 3 on every ranking list. But doesn't that tell you something? Like, why does everyone always rank them at the top? Maybe it's because they really are the best games in the series. Ever thought about that? Is it some huge conspiracy, or are they actually just that good? I'm pretty sure it's the latter. Brotherhood comes in at number 3 purely because I have less fun with it than the other two. Brotherhood is a masterpiece of story and gameplay, no doubt about it. There is so much to do here. Rome is beautiful and exploring it is just a joy. There's the Vatican, the Castel Sant'Angelo, the ruins, so many incredible places to enjoy. Cesare is the best villain the series has ever had, and seeing the Borgia family drama play out throughout the game is so good. When Monteriggioni is attacked at the start of the game and Mario was killed, I was devastated, and it just told you that there was going to be so much more trouble to come for Ezio. The gameplay is great. Taking out the Borgia captains, buying buildings and restoring the city is so fulfilling. Like I was saying, I love feeling like I'm actually saving the city from evil. There's the Romulus Cave, Leonardo's war machines, the Courtesan and Thief missions, the Christina memories, and of course building your own Brotherhood and sending them out to fight, and I still love that system. I love all of the additional content, all of the side content in Brotherhood. All of it's good and worthwhile. None of it feels like it's just there to bloat the game. It's all good. Remember games where side content was good? Jeez. And of course, Brotherhood kept the glyphs, but with the new take, revealing more about Abstergo's fucked up business practices. And there's that one file I always remember where the father and son accidentally find Abstergo on their TV and like some random channel. So then like Abstergo show up at their door and kill them. And no one ever talks about that. When people talk about like, oh, Abstergo aren't really that bad, they're just trying to make the world a better place. I'm like, have you guys all forgotten that time that Abstergo murdered a guy and his son because they accidentally stumbled upon them on their TV? Why does no one talk about this? And then at the end, Desmond meets Subject 16 for the first time. And are they in the grey, by the way? Like, I've always wondered, like, is that the grey? I don't know. Anyway, it's cool. I also love the VR games you could play in the Animus. I just found them a lot of fun. Like, I've wasted so much time trying to get the records on those games. The one thing that brings Brotherhood down for me is that there are just a few memories that I really, like, you know, memory missions that I just really don't enjoy playing. Like, I hate pretty much all of Sequence 4. Well, up until you get to do the Leonardo missions. But genuinely, like, every time I get to Sequence 4 in Brotherhood, I want to die. Also, the full sync requirements kick my ass on so many occasions throughout the game. Like, I've never unlocked those two final Christina memories on my own. I had to watch them online because I will just never stop being so crap at doing full sync. Like, I will always suck at that. That's not the game's fault, that's a me problem, but it does make it less fun for me to play when I suck at it. However, the modern day is the best in the whole series. Bantering with the team, reading emails, exploring modern day Monteriggioni and the villa, going to the Colosseum, meeting Juno in the flesh, and Lissy getting stabbed. It's just brilliant from start to finish. And that's what I enjoy most about Brotherhood, really. It's just a fantastic game, but I just don't love it quite as much as the next two. Revelation starts slow, and I always fuck up that first mass shaft sequence because Ubisoft decided to move Eagle Vision off the control from a triangle in the control and made that gun, so I always try and pull Eagle Vision and then shoot a guy and then he sees me. But when you get to Constantinople, the game becomes fantastic. The city is beyond gorgeous with incredible architecture and colours. Zooming around the city on zip lines and knocking people down with my hook blade is so much fun. The story was engaging and enjoyable, but what really makes this game stand out for me is the way Ezio grows. How he's become older and disillusioned but still determined to finish what he started. Going back and seeing Altair's life after the first game was such a joy to behold. Altair had a fantastic story that needed to be told in the games. Seeing his sons and Maria and the suffering that he went through in his life, but how dearly he still held to his creed and how he died alone in the library just so he could protect the Apple of Eden and pass it on to the messenger. I really enjoy the gameplay in Revelations. I enjoy tower defense, but I rarely, if ever, have to use it because I'm, you know, good at keeping my defenses up. I like crafting the bombs and finding various creative ways to use them. The Cappadocia sequence is probably my favourite in the whole game. As horrible as it turns out for the people, it's so engaging to be part of. I love exploring Constantinople, finding the books and treasure, and of course meeting Sophia. I love Sophia Sartor, and I'm so happy Ezio ended up with a woman who truly understands him. And then of course there's Yusuf. It's impossible not to love Yusuf. The ending of Revelations is the best in the entire series. Ezio explains his interpretation of the creeds before going in and finding Altair's corpse, declares he's seen enough for one life, and then speaks directly to Desmond in what is definitely the most powerful moment of all for me. And then of course we see the actual collapse of the Isu world, and it's so emotional. Speaking of Desmond, the modern day in this game, I love it. We might not have a whole town to explore like Brotherhood, but I love Desmond's journey. I love hearing all about his life, and those sequences are so well crafted. The way that they recreate things through these pieces of data. You see flashes on the wall of things, and then when you get to the last level and you realise that you're actually in Abstergo, I love that. I've played through those sequences and the Lost Archives so many times because I actually genuinely love that gameplay, and I quite often just turn it on just to play that because I find it really fun. Getting to meet the memory of Clay and hear his thoughts was also really powerful. Like, I love that line, "What is a man but the sum of his memories? We are the stories we live, the tales we tell ourselves." That's one of my favourite quotes in the whole series. There are also so many brilliant quotes in Revelations, like the entire speech that Ezio makes where he says I've heard your name once before, Desmond, a long time ago. I do not know where you are, by what means you can hear me, but I know you are listening. Or when he says my story is one of thousands and the world will not suffer if it ends too soon. Brilliant. Just incredible dialogue from Darby McDevitt. Iconic. Plus that theme music is just beautiful. Beautiful. Revelations was and is a masterpiece, and it is severely underrated by the gaming world. The perfect conclusion to the perfect trilogy. Sometimes I wish we'd left it there. And of course, at number one, the best game in the series, Assassin's Creed 2. I find it hard to put my love for this game into words. To me, it is perfect. The perfect story, the perfect world, the perfect gameplay, the perfect character. When I play this game, I feel like I'm really there, part of the world of Renaissance Italy. I admire the writers for taking a period of history that was not that well known and crafting such an incredible story around it, turning the Pazzi conspiracy into a much greater narrative going all the way to the Doge and later Pope himself. Ezio's character arc is also brilliant. Watching him grow from a naive teenager to a fully fledged assassin is so rewarding. And the characters he meets along the way are all so wonderful. Rosa, Paola, Leonardo, of course, Bartolomeo. It's such a great cast of characters that I miss terribly. In terms of gameplay, AC2 has it all. Classic Assassin's Creed social stealth and parkour, but with far more fun ways to use it. It has a flying machine, the Carnivale, assassin tombs with platforming puzzles, punching the Pope in the face. And of course that incredible ending where you meet Minerva and discover the ones who came before know that Desmond is watching and that they have a message for him. Speaking of Desmond, escaping Abstergo and with Lucy and meeting Sean and Rebecca at the hideout is so fun. I had no idea that those two dummies, Sean and Rebecca, would go on to be my favourite characters in the whole series and some of my favourite characters in the whole world. And who can forget the glyphs? Finding out what the truth was one of the most fascinating aspects of the game, and while I still struggle with some of those puzzles, completing them is so satisfying. Another joy of AC2 is getting to visit so many different places. We see Venice, Florence, Forlì, San Gimignano, Monteriggioni, and of course Rome. And I've never been to Italy, but I hold it as my favourite place in the whole world because those places look so gorgeous, and one day I will get there and I will see them in person and I will listen to Ezio's family and I will cry at the feet of the Doge's palace. Just trust me on this one. I love how we can rebuild Monteriggioni and turn it into a thriving town, and I love how immersive AC2 feels. I like that you have to visit a shop to fix your armour, visit the doctor on the street to get medicine, paying to use the fast travel between towns, buying artwork for your house. All those little touches that make the world feel real and make me feel like I'm really part of it. Not just playing a game, but experiencing a story and a world. It also has the best soundtrack in the series. Ezio's Family, Earth, Home in Florence, Florence Tarantella, Tour of Venice and Flight over Venice. All masterpieces from that master Jesper Kyd. I agree with the criticism that sequence 12 and 13 break the flow of the game, and that is disappointing. But when I played the game for the first 2 times, it didn't have those DLCs included, and it was a perfect experience. So I'm going to base it on that. And for me, you know, even with Sequence 12 and 13, it is a perfect experience. It's the best AC game and one of the greatest gaming experiences I have ever had. It will live in my heart forever, and it will always be one of my favourite games ever made. And I doubt that will ever change. So that's my Assassin's Creed ranking. Thank you for watching. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Shout at me for my opinions on Black Flag and Syndicate, because I probably deserve it. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye!